I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I know I say this every single time. I've got something special for you today, but this one is truly special. I have got right here with me my friend and the CEO and founder of ZoomInfo, Mr. Henry Schuck. And boy, do we've got some great content to talk about with you guys today. Henry, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you for having me. Usually people struggle to follow my energy, but it's clear I'm going to struggle to follow yours today, but I'm going to do my best.
You'll do just fine. Look, man, I've been waiting such a long time to have you on the show. As you know, the Modern Selling Podcast is a 7-year-long running show. You are so busy that it took me, I don't know how many years, 6 years to get you on the show, man. But I'm excited to have you here. I've been watching your career. I've been watching you guys from what you did at Discover.org. I've been watching all the things that you guys are doing. And of course, as you know, we're in the evolution of from converting from a service company into a SaaS company, selling to the sales line of business. And of course, we want to be just like you guys. So it's been awesome to watch your career and your success. So welcome, man. And I'm excited. Just do me a favor. For those out there that maybe haven't heard of ZoomInfo, just give a little background about yourself and the company, and then I've got a very special question I want to ask you.
Great. Cool. So I'm Henry Schuck. I'm the founder and CEO of ZoomInfo. I founded the business in 2007 in my law school dorm, so 17 years ago. I did it by putting $25,000 on my credit card, $25,000 on my co-founder's credit card. And originally, the idea was, how do we build a data asset and a platform to deliver that data to sales and marketing professionals? And that data needed to be really high quality data on companies and the people who worked at those companies. And that our customers would use that data to engage with their next best customer, to identify their next best customers, to understand who the decision makers were at the accounts that they were trying to get into, to be able to segment their markets. And back then, I thought that this data asset probably lived organically inside of every company, but it turns out it doesn't. Most companies don't have great data on who even their existing customers are, much less who their next prospective customers are going to be. And so we've spent the last 17 years building out a data asset of 100 million companies, 300 million business professionals, mobile phone numbers, email addresses, the highest accuracy data on that core data. But over the last few years, what we've really started focusing on is that it's not good enough to just tell you these are companies you should sell to, but that it's really important to tell you when those companies may be in market for your products and services, or when there's an event that gets triggered that makes them more likely to convert in a sales process. And so that can be everything from an intent signal to they just hired a new CIO, or they just hired a new VP of sales, they just hired a new CMO, they just added this technology. And we know that when you add this technology, you're about to add these 3 additional technologies. It could be a new job posting that says that they're working on a project, an SAP implementation project or a cybersecurity project. And so we're taking all of that signal that exists out in the digital world and using it to identify which companies for each of our 35,000 customers are in market for their products and services right now. And then that core company and contact data feeds their ability to engage with them today in real time.
Now, tell me about the Discoverorg-Zoom connection here. And then I got a special story to tell you about Discoverorg.
Okay, awesome. So the company I founded was called Discoverorg. As we grew the business, we were growing fast and we were doing that profitably. And so we had an opportunity to do some, to buy some companies, to acquire some businesses in our space. The first one we did was a company called Rain King. So if you're super old school, you really do remember like the Rain King and Discoverorg days. And then after we acquired Rain King, that was in 2017, we had the opportunity to acquire ZoomInfo. And we made that acquisition in February 2019, and then we changed our names. We changed our name. So we all became ZoomInfo. So even though the company I started was called Discoverorg, when I tell the story now, I've like changed it in my brain to say like I founded ZoomInfo because ZoomInfo is the company. It just has a different name.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I was, as you know, I sat in the seat as a VP of sales, and there's a very interesting story. So I launched a digital sales training program, and it was all about tools and technology at that point in time. And one of the things that we were trying to assess was which sales tools were actually driving either meetings or pipeline or closed won deals. And so what I asked our sales operations team for 350 sellers is I said, hey, what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to create 2 new fields that will track every time someone books a meeting. A rep has to fill in which tools did they use to create that meeting. And every time they go to close loss or close won a deal, they have to fill out the exact same set of pieces of information, which tools they use to be able to close won or close lost the deal. And so in the organization, we had Discoverorg, and we had, what was the Salesforce company that they bought and went out, and then they sunset it. It was a
Data.com.
Data.com. There you go. So we were spending about $250,000 on Data.com, and thankfully Discoverorg was significantly less expensive. But what was interesting was that we heard from the field that everybody hated the data from Data.com. It was worthless. No one ever used it. And we were spending so much money. And so how this came about, this idea, was I went back to the sales ops team and I said, well, hey, prove to me that this is worth the investment. Well, they couldn't. So I said, put these fields in place, and then we can measure the ROI of our sales tools. And the best part about it was sales reps were in full control over which tools we invested in versus which ones we did. And of course, sales ops said, oh my God, sales is going to say, oh, we shouldn't put another field in Salesforce. I was like, are you kidding me? If we can tell them that we can take that money and reinvest it, then they're gonna love it. All right, so here we go. So that was the story.
Love it.
So we're 3 months into this, reps utilizing these new features now inside of Salesforce, the properties I just mentioned. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait a minute, we've got $1 million attributed in pipeline for Discoverorg, and we've got 0 on Data.com. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Then we hit 6-month mark, and we had $4 million attributed to Discoverorg, and we had, kid you not, $1,100 to Data.com. So I made the decision.
Tough one, by the way. Sounds like a really tough decision.
Oh, a really tough one, right? I made the decision to recommend that we slice this tool, and so I said, hey, kill it. Don't tell anybody. Just kill the tool and see if the Salesforce responds. So month 9, we killed Data.com. Not a single peep from the Salesforce came out. And so we saved the $250,000. So anyways, so that's my experience with Discoverorg and Data.com. It was clearly the winner in our particular case. And so I've been a longtime follower of what you've been doing for a long time.
I appreciate it, Mario. It's always great to hear the Discoverorg stories because they're from a long time ago. And I have just like anything from the past, I have a bunch of nostalgia around like that time when we were building the companies, and it was just like kind of 3 guys and a dog in a garage. And then like we shared a building at a point with like a massage studio. We shared like office space with them. And then, and now I'm really proud of what we've been able to build, but those early days are like special and you don't ever really get them back. It's like your kids when they're 3 and 4, it's a very different time, and you always have like a close feeling about that. That's how I feel about Discoverorg stories.
Absolutely. Totally understand. Well, listen, I always ask all my guests a very special question. You're no different. So that is, tell us something about yourself that nobody knows, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
So I'm going to say it's hard to find on my social profiles, but I'm a lawyer in 2 states. So I'm a licensed attorney in Washington and in Nevada. I thought I was going to move to Nevada after I finished law school, and then ended up moving to Washington State instead. So I took the bar exam in Nevada, passed, and then 5 years later took a state bar exam in Washington State. And so maybe this is the actual, you can't find it on my social media profiles, but I've been able to successfully challenge 8 speeding tickets through that legal education. And that's about, outside of what I do inside of ZoomInfo, that's the only place where I really flex that legal muscle. So I'm getting back my $100,000 in law school loans, $130 at a time with speeding tickets.
That's a good one. So the good news is that you have fought the speeding tickets. The question is what kind of car were you driving?
Yeah, I was in most of those. I was in a Tesla, and but only 6 were mine. 1 was my wife's, and then 1 was my friend's that I took on pro bono.
There you go, man. Good. Well, congratulations on that. I had actually, so as you know, my background is all around the social selling expert, right? So I actually did not find that detail on your social profile. So that's a good one. I didn't know that, but I'm sure it has come in handy, especially as you've built the organization, having that law background. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I think, like, first of all, right out of the gates, it gives a company a bunch of additional credibility, or at least I felt like it did, that the CEO and founder was also a lawyer. It wasn't like I was just like randomly starting a company, but it was like I had options and I still did this thing. So there was some credibility around it. And then it just gives you a really great foundation for understanding risk. And, a business with no risk is not a business. There's risk in everything that you do and in decisions that you make, and being able to understand the risks in a business and how to take them and how to mitigate against a downside of that risk, I think is a really valuable thing you learn as an attorney. Usually, or unfortunately, or usually, lawyers tend to be really, really risk averse. But if you can take what you've learned about how to understand risk, and then know where to act and where to mitigate risk and how to manage your business when you have a really strong understanding of the risks that you're taking, I think was super valuable. So validation of the business early on, and then the ability to manage risks after, I think are the sort of 2 big things that the legal education continues to help with.
Way to go, man. Well, congratulations on that. And hopefully by now you've paid off all the student loans.
Yes, just about.
Good, man. Well, let's get into some good content here. And, a lot of folks that are listening in, sales leaders, sales reps, marketing, etc., they have sales teams that sell to the C-suite. And I really liked the idea of having this conversation with you because you clearly sell to the sales line of business. You have a large sales organization as well. Multiple products that you guys sell out into the industry. But obviously, as a CEO, you are being prospected too as well. So let's talk a little bit about what are maybe the top 3 things that you notice of when someone is selling to you that is good, bad, different, or interesting. What are some of those 3 things that you see?
Yeah, so first of all, this isn't revolutionary, but personalization matters. And it matters more at the CEO level or at the C-suite level, because there's so much more publicly available information that I put out there, whether it be an earnings call, a press release, an interview that I do. And so showing up to a director of sales and trying to sell your product where there's like very little out there about like that they're putting out, there might be a few things you can use to personalize, versus selling to me where there's like an infinite amount of information that exists out in the world that I've put out there, not coming to my conversation or pitching me without that personalization element is like, it's never going to get my attention. And so the best sellers show up and go, hey, during your earnings call, you said this and that. I just watched this podcast you did, and you said this thing was most important to you. I'd love to show you how we helped companies that look like yours solve exactly that through blah, 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 blah. A lot of messaging is generic. And so if I walk away from reading your message, not understanding what it is you do, because it's like so generic, we help with your HR issues. It's like, no, that's not enough. Like, there are all sorts of problems inside of ZoomInfo that I'm trying to solve every day. And I know where those problems are, and I know what we're doing to solve them. And I kind of know what the next set of problems is going to be once I clear the deck on the first set of problems. And so if you show up and you're able to tell me like, hey, we help you solve this specific problem, and we have some proof points that have shown we've solved that problem for companies of your scale or companies that look like yours, that's a much more likely message to get me to take action. Now, then I'll tell you, what action am I going to take? Because like pitching me for an hour-long call or a 30-minute call, it's very, very unlikely it's going to be me that gets on that call with you. But give me a good pitch and then ask me to connect you to the right person in the business who owns that decision. I will do that. I'm very happy to do that. And guess what? If I push you down to my CHRO or my CRO or my VP of content or whatever it is, they're going to take that meeting. They're going to take the meeting because I forwarded it on to them. And so you have this opportunity to pitch me and make the right ask. If you ask me for an hour or 30 minutes to do a demo or whatever it is, like I'm really unlikely to do that at this size. If I'm a sub, call it 50 employees or 100 employees, I'm much more likely to engage there. And I'm still going to take a couple demos a year, but I'm much more likely to help you get to the right place in the business. I have no problem doing that, assuming like you explained your solution, it wasn't generic, and it touches one of the things in the business, one of those problem points in the business that I'm trying to solve. I will always push that to our team. And there's a lot of business that's gotten done at ZoomInfo because of that.
So I think what I hear you saying is don't spray and pray at the C-suite.
100%.
Do take the time to personalize that individual message to the individual or to the challenges that the company might be facing, that you can individualize to the role and how that person is impacted by those challenges. Is that what I hear you saying, bro?
That's right. Yep, that's right.
And I think this is one of the fundamental problems that exists with a number of sales engagement tools that are out there, which has made it so easy to be able to throw in an 18-step cadence with 10 emails, and someone has written these amazing, beautiful emails, and it's just autopilot. You put it in, it's just go, 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 go. But the reality is that what should be happening is before you hit go on these sequences, cadences, whatever you're going to call them, that first message and that touch point, maybe on social especially, should be hyper-personalized in those first two sentences that Henry knows, that Mario listened to, in this case, the earnings call because you're a public company, right? Or some other piece of information that you shared out on social. That's kind of what you're driving at. Is that accurate?
100%. Yep, that's right.
And then I heard you kind of give a little bit of delineation between size, right? Large size organization versus a smaller size organization. So maybe rewind, go backwards in time and talk about, when you were prior to being a public company, prior to being as large as you guys were, what was the difference between your engagement with the seller versus now?
Yeah, look, when we're a sub 100 employee company, I am your point of contact for a lot of purchases. If we're gonna get a new CRM or a new marketing automation system, or I'm gonna use an appointment setting firm, or I'm gonna buy a new software for our engineers to use, like all of those decisions were mine sub 100 employees. They're probably mine sub 200 employees. And then after that, I had really experienced operators in the business who were making those decisions on my behalf. And so you have to kind of think about when am I in a position where I'm delegating decisions downstream to what I believe are really capable leaders. And then when am I the person who's making all of those decisions? And I would tell you somewhere between 100 and 200 employees, that's going to happen. And so you want to make sure that your messaging and your ask is taking that into consideration. If I'm a 100 employee company, I'm making most of those calls. I'm going to be involved in the sales process. If I'm a 1,000 person company, someone else on my team is making those decisions. And I'm kind of setting the agenda for the things that I care about and the things that I think we, from a strategy perspective, need to go improve. But I'm not actually on the hook I'm not actually the one implementing and deploying the solutions to solve those strategies.
So, love what you just said. Let me just tease this out a little bit. And that is, look, most of our sales reps, regardless of the industry that you sell to, they are targeting usually that VP and above. That's usually the target, because we believe that theoretically they have the power and or the budget to be able to make decisions. So a lot of reps feel like when they get the CEO, the COO, the CRO, whoever it is on the phone, that, you know, they hit the jackpot, right? And this is like, whoo, ching, I got him, I got her. How do you feel about that? Do you recommend targeting high up on the ladder always as when you're selling?
You probably don't want me on a call right away, right? If I show up to your first call where you have to do a good amount of discovery before you really understand what our pain points and problems are, before you get into how you might help resolve those, you don't want that call with me, right? You want to be able to show up to the call with me, understanding our organization, understanding our pain points and problems, having built championship within the organization with people that I trust. And then if I have to come to a meeting, really what I want to know is that you understand what we're trying to solve, that you have a great solution to solve it, and that somebody senior is there who's going to go like, Henry, I'm going to be your partner. Like, look, every vendor-client relationship has moments where one of the sides is disappointed. And what I really want with the people we do business with is that when that happens, I'm not just going to write you off. I'm not going to go, you know what, those guys messed up, I'm going to somebody else. But that I'm going to show up, I'm going to tell you the things that I'm disappointed about, and then I'm going to expect you to step in and improve those things for me going forward. That's what a great partner does. And I want to know that I have that type of relationship at the company. That like, you're going to show up to the call, you're going to tell me you're going to do a great job, and you're going to like put your neck on the line, that you're going to do the best job that you can. And to the extent that you underdeliver against that, then I'm going to call you and ask you to make it right. And so I want deep understanding of the problem, championship in the business, and then a partnership attitude when I show up to that call. I don't want to be in the call when you're doing discovery. I don't need to be in the call for the first demo of the product. I don't need to be in the call when we ask you a bunch of RFP type questions about, does it do this? Can it do that? Can it do this? I want to know you're going to solve the problem. I want some champion in the business to tell me that you're going to solve the problem. And then I want to know you're going to act like a partner during our relationship. So you don't want me on the first call. You would much prefer to take that with somebody else at the business.
The challenge that I see, while I totally agree with what you just said, the challenge that I see, however, is, let's just say you've got a director or a VP in your organization that's responsible for doing all those things that you said, don't have me on these calls, right?
Yep.
How do I then get the CXO onto that call? Because many VPs and directors will will feel like I'm doing an end around, right? How do you deal with that situation?
And when you say how do you deal, like, you mean you want the CXO to be on the call?
Theoretically, because in many cases, depending on the organization. So let's just put it depending on the organization. But there is a level of purchase power that someone has, and it's based upon levels, right? And so depending on the size, if you're a public company, something that's going to cost several millions of dollars likely is going to have at least your rubber stamp on it, that you're aware of it, right? But something that's a couple $100, no, that's not going to have your rubber stamp on it. You're not going to be involved in that. So the question then becomes is on those purchases that do require the C-suite or the higher level, how do I get you on these calls if I don't start with you?
Yeah. So I think that two things. One, you really should be leveraging your champion in the business to get me involved. And I recognize that there are moments where your champion might feel like he's not on your like he's not on your team to help get the CXO on the call. But it is really important that you get your champion to be on your team. There are important moments in the call. There's this really important moment in a sales cycle where you go from being like a seller and a potential customer to being on the same team where you're both sellers now in the organization. And it's really important for you to listen for that moment and then shift the way you guys are talking about things. So I see that moment. I see it on calls. I see it on calls with reps all the time where you see the prospect shift from, okay, great, I love this. Here's what we need to do now. I've got to go get Jim on a call. Jim's going to come to a call. Jim's my manager. He's this chief revenue officer. We're going to have to convince him of the same thing. And that's great because what you have to do at that moment is recognize that you guys are now on the same team. And so, hey, great, Kathy, let's talk about what does Jim care about? When you've seen him say no to a purchase before, what happened in that call? When you've seen him say yes, what happened in that call? Like, does he want to see visualizations? Will he want to see the demo? In ZoomInfo, is he going to want to look up a certain company or a certain person? Let me be prepared for that. Is he going to be in the office with you? Has he heard of us before? If the meeting went incredibly well and Jim was going to say yes at the end of the call, what will have happened in the meeting for us to get to that point? And if he said no, what would have happened in that meeting? So you're basically shifting from an I'm selling to you to a we're selling to somebody at your business, the budget holder. And that's really important to do. I think it's difficult. It's not difficult, but if I have you as a champion and we're going through the sales cycle and I know Jim has to make the final decision, I think it's very difficult for me to go around you and over to Jim and try to bring him into the conversation without like really chipping away at the trust there. Now, there are clever ways to do that. Hey, this is a big opportunity for us. It's one of our target accounts. And so I know my CEO is going to want to connect with your CEO. So I just want to let you know, like as much as I might try to keep him from multi-threading in this account, he's going to reach out to your CEO. He looks at Salesforce. He sees all of our big opportunities. He's going to want a direct relationship with your CEO. What should I tell him about that? Like, how should I tell him to engage your CEO? So there are ways to use executives on your team to do that go around, but I think it's very tough and it chips away at the trust you're building with your champion to do it. Now, I do think you should press your champion to get you that meeting. So the worst thing you can do is just go like, oh, my champion loves me. They love ZoomInfo. They're definitely going to do the deal. I think what you have to do is ask your champion to get you that meeting. Hey, I know Jim's got to be involved. When can we get in front of Jim? I'm going to bring my best game. He's going to love the product, but when do I get in front of Jim? How are you going to help me do that? So the same sort of like, you've got to help me sell it at the company. You should not shirk your obligation to get that meeting with Jim, but I think it's tough to go around him and you should leverage your executives to do that for you.
Love what you just said, especially with the executive part. And one of the tactics that we have taught sellers all the time is that when you're engaged in an opportunity, you're looking at connecting with 2 levels up, 2 levels down, side to side. And so this is because you know that influencing, that group is going to be somewhere, the sphere of influence is going to be in that segment that I just mentioned. And a great way to do that is, let's just say you're a salesperson, you're going to connect with that POC, but you're also going to look at reaching out, say, on a social platform like LinkedIn, and you're going to connect with the manager and the manager's manager, and you're going to say, hey, I wanted you to know that I'm working with Henry, and we've been talking about this topic, so that you have a face to the name, because I know in the future we'll likely be meeting. I'd love to be able to connect with you here. And now, all of a sudden, when they look at your profile, they're like, oh, you're connected to my director. You're connected to my VP, right? And so there's some ways that you can really bridge that gap. You talked about having your C-suite calling in on your behalf. That's a great way to do it. And then another way is, I don't know why more companies don't do this, Henry, but we use the podcast as an example to be able to we've closed millions of dollars of deals to be able to get to the C-suite without even having to sell our way from the bottom up or in the middle, right? And deal with that because someone wants to give that thought leadership. And then the key ask as well is not will you buy, but who do you recommend that I talk to, right? So that you can get that sponsorship from top down. So love those strategies. It reminded me of, I'll go back into my days of selling into global accounts where I had the largest pharmaceutical distribution company globally out of San Francisco that I used to manage. And one day our EVP of sales was with me and we were meeting with the CIO and he said, hey, I'm just curious, what made you take a meeting with Mario and that helped build this relationship, right? Because we flourished into a large contract. The first one was our $10 million contract, which grew to 36, which grew to $45 million contract. So I kept growing. What did that? And you know what he said, and it reminded me of what you said earlier. He said, look, I don't take meetings, but more than my top 10 vendors that we have. And we have $1 billion budget, right? IT spend. I only deal with top 10. You're not in the top 10. But when someone's willing and able to tell me how they can improve my business over my competitors, that's something I want to hear about.
Yeah.
And so our EVP of sales said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, Mario came in and said, I know about your infrastructure, I know about your systems, I know about your tools, I know what the competitors are doing, and I think I've got a way to be able to help you improve that. And so he was like, I want to hear, what are the competitors doing? Because my CEO is saying, well, what is everybody else doing, and how do we be better than them?
Totally.
Right? And so he's like, that was my interest, and I ended up building a very strong relationship with the CIO. We went to Madonna concerts, he came to my wedding, all those types of things. And it was all because of that. I worked with the middle management, VP management, knew that business. Once I knew that business, I could take it up to the C-suite and tell him, in this case, how he could be better than his competition.
Yep. And I think that goes back to this concept of, is there an actual partnership here? And that word gets thrown out a lot, but like clearly that guy was telling you, hey, you showed up as somebody who wanted a partner to help me win, not just sell me something. You wanted to tell me how to be better than my competition. You understood everything about my business before you showed up. And you felt like somebody that I would like to partner with. And in our universe, what I really want from all of our customers is anytime they're dealing with a go-to-market problem, that they want to pick up the phone and call us and say like, hey, I'm managing through this new segmentation or this new total addressable market analysis or this new set of campaigns we want to run or this new market we want to get into. Help me think through that. And if you can get to that level with your customers, they're just going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing with you.
Love that. Now let's talk a little bit more actually on the small, medium-sized businesses versus selling to the large enterprise businesses. Let's compare and contrast that. How do reps alter, if you would, their tactics when selling to the C-suite?
Yeah. So, look, I think enterprise selling is a very different animal than mid-market commercial SMB selling, which is much more velocity driven than it is relationship driven. And enterprise is very much relationship driven. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. Number one, it's very hard to get into an enterprise. And in order for you to win enterprise business, you have to go through security review, privacy review. You probably have to go in front of committee at some point. The decision can take 6 months, 9 months to get through. And so there isn't a great desire to bring in a whole bunch of new vendors at an enterprise company, because if you were to do that, you would be like, that's all you would be doing is trying to get vendors through privacy and security and committee review. And so you need a couple of vendors that you really trust who are going to go through that process and then be with you for the long term. And so relationship building is really important in the enterprise. And it requires you to understand how a decision gets made there, build a coalition, really like get people who are willing to come to your wedding or go to a concert with you. Like that's a real thing in enterprise sales. Now in velocity commercial, that's much less of a thing. They act quickly. It doesn't take multiple committees. Security and privacy review is much faster. They can transact on a credit card. And you can move much faster in mid-market and commercial enterprises than you are in the enterprise or strategic segment of your business. So what does that mean for sales leaders is that you really do manage metrics differently. Like in the enterprise segment, you're not managing conversion rate, top of the funnel to demo, to conversion rate to opportunity to stages. You're not managing those the same way as you are in mid-market. In mid-market, mid-market or commercial, I need to know how many leads are we generating? What's the percentage of those leads that convert to demo? What percentage of those demos convert to opportunity? What percentage of those opportunities convert to closed won opportunities? Over what period of time is that happening? And then I'm going to dissect each piece of that funnel along the way to make sure, like, do I have a problem with the number of leads I'm generating? Do I have a problem with how those leads are converting to demos? Because if I do, that would tell me either I have a quality problem with the leads I'm generating, or I have a problem with my SDR organization that's converting those leads. Once I'm converting to demo, what percentage of those are converting to opportunities? And is it a lower percentage? Has it been consistent? Is it up or down over the last month, the last week? How many of those are converting to closed won opportunities? I'm inspecting that. What's happening there? Is it up? Is it down? Is it up in one segment or down in another segment? In one universe, commercial, I'm managing velocity. And in another segment, enterprise, I'm really managing sort of like timeliness. I expect my enterprise deals to get closed, every 3 months or every 6 months. And I'm making sure I have enough pipeline built that's going to translate into closed won opportunities. But the velocity you're not managing velocity there in the same way. And so when you're managing those segments, there are metrics that matter in one segment that you're going to manage much closer than you're going to manage those same metrics and activity metrics in another segment.
And so with that in mind, then for reps, how do we alter, I guess, our tactics when selling to the C-suite to maybe a small, medium-sized versus the enterprise level?
In the small, medium-sized businesses, the C-suite is empowered to act, can act quickly, doesn't need a committee, is likely not going to push something down to like some group of people to make the decision, can make the decision quickly on the call, sometimes after one call, maybe in a week or 2 weeks. That sales cycle can be driven very quickly if you're in a smaller business and you're connected with the C-suite. In the upper market, in the enterprise, being connected to the C-suite is important because they can help you at the margin and they can connect you with the right people who are going to make the purchasing recommendation in the business. But it's highly unlikely that they're going to be involved throughout the process or going to pull the trigger in a week or 2 weeks. They're going to be more thoughtful and they have a team that's going to make the purchasing decision. You want to leverage them to get you to the right team, to explain what the buying process is, and to be a champion at the margin. And by at the margin, I mean, hey, it's June, it's the end of our quarter. You just got red lines back from legal. You want to leverage a relationship you built up front that you can say, hey, listen, we're going to turn these red lines around really quickly. Can you help me make sure that we get this deal in this quarter because it's important to our team? That's where you can like leverage the C-suite relationship you built, but not to change a decision, right? Like oftentimes my account managers might come to me and say, hey, we're backwards in this account. I think they're going to go to a competitor. I need you to engage with the CEO. It's like, I'm not a magician, I'll go do it. But like, don't put all of your like eggs in the basket that I'm going to get on with the CEO and convince him that some analysis that they did downstream was flawed. And then I have enough capital to tell them to go change the decision downstream, like that's a really tough ask. And, what I can do is accelerate the sales cycle with this person. I can probably get them to add another module that I think is important for their business that you weren't able to get through downstream, like professional services or something that I think they're going to need in 6 months that they don't need now. Maybe I can get them to, I can negotiate directly with them on price at the end or something like that. But I can't change the outcome of the work that you're going to put in. You are ultimately responsible for that account. And I'm going to build relationships to support that. But putting me in a position where I have to go change the decision that your buying committee made with the CEO is pretty unlikely. And I don't even want to be in that position. It's our job to win the deal. Getting them to change their decision is it's a Hail Mary. It almost never works.
And you said a word earlier. Was it you or was it me that said multi-thread? I think it was you, right?
Said it. Yeah,
you did say that. I don't know if people caught that, but I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we see with most reps today, small business or large, where they're not multi-threaded. So describe what multi-threading is so people understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so it's basically you want to be connected to multiple people who make the decision at the company. You don't want to be single-threaded, which is you just have one point of contact in the company, and they're kind of telling you that they're going to make all of the decision, and there's nobody else around them that you need to be engaged with. Now, that's almost always not true unless you're in the SMB and you're with the CEO. Pretty much everywhere else, and when you're not with the CEO, the decision is multi-threaded, which means multiple people in the organization are going to be involved in that decision, and you're going to want to have FaceTime and activity with all of those people. We sell 70% of the time into the sales organization, 30% of the time into the marketing organization, but in a bunch of instances, whether or not it's coming out of marketing's budget, in that 70% when we're selling it to sales, marketing is involved in that decision. So they might say, oh, actually, I'm getting this from somewhere else, or we don't really need this, or they're going to show up and they're going to say I love it. I think I can use it too. You're going to want to be multi-threaded with sales and marketing at ZoomInfo, not just sales. You're going to want to bring in that decision maker and have multiple threads into the company.
So all this talk that we just had around multi-threading, around the different sales motions that you're going to go through between enterprise versus SMB, selling to the C-suite, and or to the buying committee and or the influencing group. Let's talk about, how we can get our job done better and more quickly. Talk a little bit about your go-to-market team and how you guys are using AI to sell more efficiently, and if you've seen any impact yet on the business.
Yeah, totally. There are two big ways that we use AI at ZoomInfo, and then we built into the product so our customers can use it too. The first one is, historically, if I told you go into ZoomInfo and find your next best customer, you have to triangulate 8 different data points. Is it in my total addressable market? Is it showing intent? Is it growing? Have they visited my website? Do they have a new CIO who's going to make buying decisions? Whatever those signals are that would tell me a company is the right fit for me to engage with and that this is the right time for me to engage, I'd have to go to 8 different screens and do a beautiful mind triangulation to know. And so the thing that we've seen generative AI do the best work at is to be able to understand a lot of data and then summarize it back really succinctly and well. And so what we've been able to do in ZoomInfo is understand who all of our customers are, who their customers are, and then go tell the AI, go leverage all of those different digital data points to prioritize every day who they should be engaging with based on signal that we're collecting. And so every day in Copilot, our AI solution, a seller sits down, they have their list of target accounts, and then it's telling you at this target account, this is the right time to engage because this thing just happened. They just hired a new CIO. That CIO came from a company you've sold to before. Here's the message you should send to that company. And that just takes a lot of the historical pain out of the sales process and makes it very fast to go from signal to action in your target accounts. The second thing is, we record calls. We have emails with customers. We record support questions, product usage, what we need to be. And then I'm going to go meet with the CEO of one of our customers. And what happens before I go meet with the CEO or the chief revenue officer of one of our customers? I go to the account manager and I go like, give me the account brief on this account. And they go spend the rest of their day, probably 8 hours or 6 hours, writing up like, here's my main point of contact. Here are the things that they care about. Here's what's happened recently. Here's what's in play right now. The renewal is in 3 months. We look good or bad for that. Here are the things we're trying to sell them. Here's what Bobby, the CEO, cares about. And it takes them all day to put that together for me so that I can read it and walk into a meeting. Now, meanwhile, all of that information exists. It exists in our CRM. It exists in our call recording solutions. It exists in the emails we've had back and forth with the customer. And so what we've been able to do inside of ZoomInfo's account AI function is bring all of that data together, including all the third-party data. So what are they saying in their job postings? What did they say in their earnings calls? What did the last interviews that their C-suite has done? What did they said in those interviews? Bring all of that data together and then just let me ask questions to it. So today I had a meeting with one of our large enterprise customers. I didn't have to tell the account manager to build me anything. I just went into ZoomInfo and I said, I'm the CEO of ZoomInfo. I'm meeting with this company today. What are they going to be upset about? What are they most excited about? If I'm going to ask for something in this account, what should I ask for? And it just spits all of that information back because it has access to all of that really valuable data that's filled with insight. And so I don't have to wait 6 hours of my account manager's time. I can just ask AI to tell me the answer based on all the information we've already collected. And that really has changed the way I engage with ZoomInfo as a platform. It's changed the way my chief revenue officer, our senior VP of account management engages with the platform, our account managers engage with the platform, and it's making everybody's job much more efficient.
So I'm no longer then just thinking of ZoomInfo as the platform that's going to give me names, contact information, titles, data enrichment, right? I am now thinking of it as a tool that's helping with account research, account insights, and or buying in signals or intent
prioritization.
Signals. Yeah, anything that's going on inside the account, because theoretically, someone buys ZoomInfo, then they buy it was Chorus that you guys acquired. What is the platform name called within?
Chorus.
Chorus. Okay, so Chorus, and then you've got some intent signal capabilities inside there. So you're taking all this together, and now as a seller, I have access to this by asking AI to go look at all the data that it'll analyze on the back end or has already analyzed, and then spit it out to me, all private and contained within our platform.
100%. That's exactly right. So prioritize the accounts based on the signals, and then let me ask questions about what's happened in this account based on all the data that's already been collected.
I'm going to go off on a whim here, and hopefully no one's offended by it, but that's sexy, man.
I agree.
I love it. It really, as I think about, our journey and what we have been doing here, and how I started out with the fundraising process, there were really two companies that I was looking at in terms of what's happening in the industry. And I thought about, of course, ZoomInfo and your guys' journey. I've been tracking for a long time, as you know. And I saw that you guys were acquiring this, and bolting all these organizations together to ultimately form a total solution. And as I look at our go-to-market strategy, I raised some money on a single product solution. But then when I presented a slide to later VCs for fundraising, that said, we're not just doing this. Think about this whole continuum and this workflow of what we're doing, these 5 areas, and put it all together right here in the center with this. This is what we're delivering to the marketplace.
This is the vision. Yep.
And so I took that page out of, there was 2 companies I was targeting, and one of them was ZoomInfo. So for that having been said, if it's worth anything, I've been the fan from the sidelines. I've been watching, and I knew, I didn't know the specifics of the playbook, but I could obviously see the things that you guys were doing. And so hats off, congratulations on building a great and successful organization, Henry.
Awesome. Thank you, Mario. I really appreciate it.
Well, hey, we're up on time here. There's just a few things that I want to cover back with you, and that is, Henry, if someone wants to actually get connected with you, is that through Twitter? Is that through LinkedIn? What's the best way to connect with Henry Schuck?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm really easy to find on both of those platforms. My email is just henry.schuck@zoominfo.com, so you can email me too. All my contact information is inside of ZoomInfo, including my cell phone number. So you can connect with me in any of those ways.
And if you connect with Henry, especially on LinkedIn, after this podcast, you would be, I don't even know what the right word is, not smart.
Negligent
to not write a personalized connection request that says, hey, Henry, I heard you on the Modern Selling podcast with Mario. Loved your point about.
Yep.
And then you fill in the blank. With that in mind, Henry, I asked this question of all my guests, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Shawshank Redemption.
And there it is. I think that is that one has been on 270, I can't remember how many episodes in the last 7 years.
Yep, I believe it.
That is the number one movie that people have been excited about. With that in mind, bro, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Hey, all of you listening in right now, don't turn that dial quite yet. Listen to this final message for the Modern Selling Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download FlyMessage, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.